On the campus of Appalachian State University in Boone, North Carolina, we surveyed students passing by. So this is the portrait of Amalie Zuckerkandl. So just looking at this, what's the first thing that stands out to you?
Her face. It stands out from the rest of it. The rest of it doesn't really seem to have much besides her face. Her face is really detailed.
I would say the color of her dress with the background. They go together really well, and they're both sort of that muted but vibrant color.
I think the lack of detail in her body, how you can kind of see a hand, but it's not really there. I think that's really interesting. It implies that her face is more important.
In reality, portrait of Amalie Zuckerkandl is not a grainy image printed onto an 8 by 11 inch piece of paper from the internet, but a 128 by 128 centimeter oil on canvas on display in the Belvedere Palace in Vienna, Austria. Indeed, as we have heard from people on the streets, viewers find this painting's value in the beautiful technique and style used by Gustav Klimt. However, there is more to this painting than what meets the eye. The extraordinary life of the artist himself and the legacy he left, the provenance of the work he created, and the subject of the painting itself all culminate to create the immense value the people of Vienna and the art community around the world place in it.
Where have you seen Gustav Klimt's influence in art today, with this painting?
Well, with his painting, he was influenced highly by Egyptian art. And then we have lots of influences just because an artist would admire a certain artist and would possibly take on some of those talents that he had. Mainly what I would say his influence today would be in design, because he was very meticulous in creating his works, and also the use of gold leaf and silver leaf.
Mm-hmm. What makes his work special, stand out from everyone else that you've seen from this time period?
In his portraits, it's pretty reserved for those, particularly with this one that is unfinished, because he started this in 1917 and then he passed away in 1918. So you can, if you compared this with his other works, you would see that it does not have the detail. It was beginning. This almost, particularly the background, looks impressionistic. It's still a beautiful work, but unfinished according to how you would compare it to his other works.
Gustav Klimt was born in 1862 in Baumgarten, a suburb outside of Vienna in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, to a poor family with many children. When he was 14, he enrolled in the Viennese School of Arts and Crafts, where he was recognized for his talents and passed with flying colors. In 1883, he, his brother Ernst, and his friend Frank Match completed their studies and opened a joint studio, and they quickly became popular among the cultural elite at the recommendation of his professors. In 1892, Klimt's father and brother passed away, leaving him emotionally unstable and financially responsible for his family. His pace of work began to slow, and he began to question the traditional style of artwork he had been taught and was currently practicing. The next year, Match and Klimt were commissioned to paint the interior of a cathedral in Vienna and disagreed over how it should be done. Klimt was more interested in developing his personal style, whereas Match thought it best to continue in the traditional way as a team. Klimt left the Künstlerhaus, Vienna's leading association of artists, amidst this controversy, claiming that they were monopolizing art sales and exhibits in 1897. Rebelling against the conservatives, he helped found the Vienna Secession and assumed leadership as the first president. The secessionists promoted young, up-and-coming artists who strayed from the traditional. They also introduced Vienna to works from all over Europe and even printed their own periodicals that would widely circulate their ideas. It was during this time that Klimt entered his mature golden age, producing renowned works such as Adele Bloch-Bauer, Field of Poppies, and The Kiss. Until his end, while his style made shifts, he continued to paint portraits of women and nature. In 1918, Gustav Klimt suffered a stroke, leaving him paralyzed and no longer able to create art. 1 month later, he passed away from complications of influenza. He was 55 years old. At the time of his death, Klimt was considered part of a bygone era, as the first true modern movements, largely abstract, took off across Europe. He left little influence on these new developments, and while some artists, such as Egon Schiele and Oskar Kokoschka, revered him early on, they later moved on to create their own styles. However, Gustav Klimt did leave his mark on the art community, contributing to the establishment of Symbolism and Art Nouveau as prominent movements throughout the continent. Arguably more importantly, however, he was able to transform Vienna into a respected cultural center when the secessionists gave many young artists the spotlight they needed to succeed.
Klimt started the portrait of Amalie Zuckerkandl in 1917 while being commissioned by Jewish art collector Ferdinand Bloch-Bauer. Unfortunately, his unexpected death left the painting unfinished. Shortly thereafter, the piece was given to Bloch-Bauer, who would display it in the bedroom of his Vienna mansion for the next 20 years. In 1938, Bloch-Bauer was forced to flee Austria because of the Nazi invasion, leaving everything behind. He spent his time during the war in Zurich, Switzerland, while his belongings were under protection order. What happened to the painting during this time period remains a mystery, but many suspect the Nazi lawyer Dr. Erich Führer gained possession of it and listed it as Nazi property. Amalie Zuckerkandl's son-in-law came across the work, but was unable to return it to Bloch-Bauer due to his death in 1945. He later sold it to the art collector and former owner of the Viennese New Gallery, Vida Künstler. Künstler retained possession of the painting up until her death in 2001, where she then donated it to the Austrian Gallery in Vienna. Since the 2001 death of Vida Künstler, there has been a debate over who the rightful owner of the portrait of Amalie Zuckerkandl is. Many argue that the painting should be returned to the heirs of Ferdinand Bloch-Bauer, but a panel granted the legal ownership of the painting to Austria in 2006.
Even though she is the subject of the painting, she remains largely overlooked. Miriam Amalie Schlesinger was born in 1869 in Vienna. She converted to Judaism in order to marry Dr. Otto Zuckerkandl, a surgeon and urologist who became university professor and head of the surgical department in the hospital used by the Jewish community. Her sister-in-law, Berta Zuckerkandl, introduced the couple to Gustav Klimt, and he began sketching out her portrait in 1914 when she was 44 years old. When the Great War broke out in Europe, Amalie Zuckerkandl and her husband left Vienna for Lwów, Poland, where she worked as a nurse in his hospital. Klimt continued her portrait when they returned to their home after Austria lost Lwów. Unfortunately, he passed away before he could finish her portrait, and the following year, Amalie and Otto divorced. Turmoil followed Austria, leading up to World War II. In 1942, Amalie and her daughter were deported by the Nazis to Theresienstadt and were eventually killed in the Belzec extermination camp. A cruel twist of irony for a wealthy woman who was imprisoned because of her connections with Judaism when she converted for love.
When we think of the word value, we may think in terms of money. Yes, portrait of Amalie Zuckerkandl is very valuable in this sense. The style and technique makes for a beautiful painting, even if incomplete. Klimt's famous name adds to its reverence, and its provenance, especially concerning its fate with the Nazis, makes this work even more intriguing. But perhaps even more valuable than money is its cultural place. To the art community, this painting is one of Klimt's last, and a reminder of the importance he was in influencing the Symbolism and Art Nouveau movements during his lifetime. While he is not recognized as a true modern artist, he helped to create the bridge between old and new, past and present in Vienna. To the people of his native city, he is credited as one of the founding fathers of the secessionist movement, leading to Vienna's reverence as a city of artistic innovation and respected cultural community. The arts became a source of pride and prestige.
Yet to the family of Amalie Zuckerkandl, the portrait is valuable in a much more personal way. It is a sort of memorial for their lost loved one, and on a greater scale, a memorial for the Jewish heritage lost during Hitler's reign in Nazi Germany. In fact, the unfinished portrait of Amalie Zuckerkandl eerily reflects the life of not only the subject herself, but the lives of millions imprisoned during the Holocaust. A sentence not completed, a story with no ending, a masterpiece partially painted, a life taken much too soon. Klimt's work can never be finalized, but by preserving what was completed, we can honor those lost.